Maya's heart stopped as she spotted Professor Williams walking toward the campus coffee shop, where she worked her morning shift. She ducked behind the espresso machine, her hands trembling as she untied her apron, but it was too late. Their eyes met through the steamed-up window, and she watched his expression shift from confusion to recognition to something that looked uncomfortably close to pity. "Maya?" Professor Williams approached the counter, his voice gentle but probing. "I didn't realize you worked here." She forced a smile, smoothing down her uniform shirt. "Just picking up some extra hours. Professor, you know, textbooks are expensive." The lie came easily now, after months of practice. Extra hours. As if 28 hours a week at the coffee shop, 15 hours cleaning offices downtown, and her anonymous online tutoring sessions were just picking up extra hours. Of course, he nodded, though his eyes held questions she couldn't answer. "I noticed you missed Tuesday's lecture on economic theory, the one about wealth distribution and social mobility." The irony wasn't lost on her. Maya had been scrubbing bathroom floors at a corporate office building while her classmates discussed the very system that kept her on her knees with a toilet brush in hand. "I had a family emergency," she said, another well-rehearsed lie. Her family emergency was a past due notice on her student loan payment and a landlord threatening eviction. Professor Williams ordered his coffee a simple black brew that probably cost less than Maya spent on food in an entire day, and left with a concerned backward glance. Maya watched him go, knowing she should feel grateful for his apparent concern, but instead feeling exposed, like a fraud discovered in designer clothes that didn't quite fit. The bell above the door chimed again, and Marcus Chen walked in. Maya recognized him from her advanced economics seminar, always impeccably dressed, always asking the kind of questions that showed he'd read beyond the assigned materials. He was everything she pretended to be: confident, prepared, belonging. She braced herself for the same uncomfortable recognition she'd just endured with Professor Williams. But Marcus simply ordered a complicated drink with oat milk and extra shots, paid with a card that didn't get declined, and turned to leave. Then he paused, studying her face. "You're in Williams' class, right? The one who always sits in the back corner." Maya nodded, unsure whether to feel pleased or mortified that he'd noticed her. "Thought so. You asked that question about predatory lending last week, the one that made half the class uncomfortable." Marcus leaned against the counter, seemingly in no hurry to leave. "Most of them have never seen a payday loan store, let alone needed one." There was something in his tone, not judgment, but understanding. Maya found herself studying his face more carefully. Designer clothes, expensive watch, but there was something in his eyes that didn't match the polished exterior, something that looked almost as tired as she felt. "I should get back to work," she said, though the morning rush had died down and her manager was nowhere to be seen. "Sure," Marcus said, but he didn't move. "Hey, I know this might sound weird, but if you ever want to study together, I mean, some of these trust fund kids have never worked a day in their lives. They don't ask the right questions." He pulled out his phone. "My number's 5550147. Text me if you want to grab coffee sometime. Real coffee, not this overpriced campus stuff." As he left, Maya stared at the napkin where he'd written his number in neat handwriting. For the first time in months, she felt something other than exhaustion and anxiety. She felt curious. What did Marcus Chen, with his designer clothes and easy confidence, know about asking the right questions? And why did she get the feeling that, like her, he was hiding something behind his perfect student facade? The library's basement study room smelled like old books and desperate hope. Maya had suggested meeting here because it was free, quiet, and most importantly, anonymous. The kind of place where the students could study without anyone questioning why the scholarship girl was spending time with someone who drove a BMW to campus. Marcus arrived with an armload of textbooks and 2 cups of actual good coffee from a place off campus. "Figured you might need real caffeine for this," he said, settling across from her at the scarred wooden table. "Thanks," Maya said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. It had been 3 days since their conversation at the coffee shop, and she'd texted him on impulse after another sleepless night spent calculating whether she could afford both groceries and her bus pass for the week. They worked in comfortable silence for an hour, occasionally sharing notes or clarifying concepts. Maya found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. Marcus didn't ask personal questions or make assumptions. He just studied. Like her, he approached each assignment with the intensity of someone who couldn't afford to fail. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said during a break, his voice careful. "That question you asked about predatory lending, that wasn't theoretical for you, was it?" Maya's defenses shot up immediately. "What makes you say that?" "Because theoretical questions sound different. Academic. Yours sounded personal." Marcus leaned back in his chair, and for a moment, his polished composure slipped. "Like my questions about scholarship fraud probably sound to you." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. "Scholarship fraud," Maya repeated. Marcus was quiet for so long that Maya thought he wouldn't answer. "Then my scholarship isn't exactly what people think it is. Academic merit, sure, but not the kind everyone assumes." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect style. "I grew up in foster care, aged out at 18 with nothing but a GED and a social worker who believed in me enough to help me navigate the application process." Maya stared at him. "But you dress like, you drive a BMW, image management," Marcus said with a bitter laugh. "You know what happens when people find out you're foster care trash? Suddenly every academic achievement gets an asterisk. Every opportunity comes with whispers about diversity quotas and sob stories." He gestured to his clothes. "This is armor. Cost me 3 months of construction work wages, but it buys me credibility." Maya felt something shift in her chest. Recognition, relief, solidarity. "I work 3 jobs," she said quietly. "Coffee shop, cleaning service, and online tutoring under a fake name. I tell people I'm here on academic merit, but really I'm here on desperation and credit card debt that's going to destroy my life if I don't figure something out." "How much debt?" Marcus asked, and Maya was surprised by how matter-of-fact he sounded. 43,000 and climbing. "You, 68. But I've got a plan." Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "There are ways to make money here that don't involve selling your soul to minimum wage jobs. Rich kids pay stupid money for things they're too lazy or scared to do themselves." Maya felt a chill of unease. "What kind of things?" "Nothing illegal," Marcus said quickly. "Just creative interpretation of academic integrity policies, essay editing that crosses some lines, research that gets shared more broadly than it should, tutoring that includes a little more hands-on help than professors would appreciate." "That sounds like cheating. That sounds like survival," Marcus countered. "Look around, Maya. Half these kids have parents who hire college consultants to write their admissions essays. They have tutors who do everything but take the tests for them. The system is already rigged. We're just leveling the playing field." Maya stared at her textbook, the words blurring as she processed what Marcus was suggesting. She thought about her landlord's latest threat, about the credit card bill that kept her awake at night, about the way Professor Williams had looked at her with such careful pity. "What exactly are you proposing?" she heard herself ask. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Partnership. You handle the academic side. You're brilliant. Everyone can see that. I handle the business side. We help students who need help, and they help us survive this place." As Maya looked at Marcus across the table, she realized they were both drowning in different ways, both clinging to this elite institution like a life raft that might not be strong enough to hold them. The question was whether they would save each other or drag each other down. 6 months later, Maya stood in Dean Patterson's office, her hands folded in her lap as she watched her carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Across the massive mahogany desk, the dean shuffled through printed emails, bank records, and academic transcripts with the methodical precision of someone who had done this before. "Ms. Rodriguez," Dean Patterson said finally, her voice carrying the weight of institutional authority, "we have documentation of over 30 instances of academic dishonesty, facilitated through your and Mr. Chen's tutoring service. Students paying for completed assignments, falsified research, and in several cases, entire papers written by you personally." Maya wanted to protest, to explain the impossible choice between ethical purity and basic survival, but the words stuck in her throat. Beside her, Marcus sat in perfect silence, his designer armor finally useless against the reckoning they'd both seen coming. The irony was that their downfall had come not from the desperate students they'd helped, but from one of the wealthy. One's a trust fund junior who'd panicked during a plagiarism investigation and offered up their entire operation to save himself. The same system of privilege and protection that had driven Maya and Marcus to their desperate partnership had ultimately destroyed them. Mr. Chen, the dean continued, given your background and the challenges you've overcome, this is particularly disappointing. The university invested considerable resources in your success. Marcus finally spoke, his voice steady despite everything. The university invested in the idea of my success, Dean Patterson. There's a difference between giving someone an opportunity and giving them the tools to actually succeed. And Ms. Rodriguez, your academic performance prior to this semester was exemplary. Your professors speak highly of your potential. Dean Patterson's tone softened slightly, but her resolve didn't waver, which makes your choices here all the more tragic. Maya found her voice at last. Tragic for whom? For the students who couldn't afford to fail because their families sacrificed everything to get them here, or tragic for the institution that's built on a foundation of inequality and then acts surprised when people get creative about survival. Your anger is understandable, Dean Patterson replied, but it doesn't justify compromising the academic integrity that makes this education valuable. Valuable to whom? Maya shot back. To the kids whose parents donate buildings. To the ones who never have to choose between eating and buying textbooks. This institution's integrity is already compromised. We just made it visible. The meeting ended as Maya had known it would. Immediate expulsion for both of them. Permanent marks on their academic records, and a letter that would follow them to any future educational endeavors. As they walked across the manicured campus for the last time, Maya felt a strange mix of devastation and relief. So what now? Marcus asked as they reached the gates of the university that had promised them everything and delivered a harsh education in class warfare instead. Now we figure out what success looks like outside of their system, Maya said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. Maybe we were never meant to play by their rules anyway. As they parted ways, Marcus to pack his carefully curated possessions, Maya to face the reality of her mounting debt. Without even the hope of a degree to justify it, Maya realized that their real education had happened not in lecture halls or study groups, but in the brutal space between dreams and reality, where desperation meets opportunity and the cost of ambition becomes painfully clear. The elite university continued its business of educating the privileged and occasionally admitting the exceptional poor, secure in its belief that it had upheld its standards and protected its integrity. Meanwhile, Maya and Marcus joined the ranks of those who had learned the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the price of reaching for your dreams is everything you thought you were fighting for. Question for reflection: given the systemic inequalities that Maya and Marcus faced, were their actions ethically justified as a form of survival? Or did they compromise their integrity in a way that undermines their own goals? How do we balance individual responsibility with the recognition that some people face impossible choices within unfair systems?